A quick guide to using the little Giant M10 engine. Video catalog. Please skip to the corresponding time as needed. Safe distance. Keep a safe distance when the engine is running. Keep a distance of more than 3 meters in front of the engine in the direction of air intake. Keep a distance of more than 5 meters on the left and right sides. And do not get close to the direction of oil injection at the rear of the engine. The engine can only be started in the outdoor environment. Before starting, please prepare more than 2 kilograms of carbon dioxide, fire extinguisher, and sound isolating earphone. If the engine fails to start many times or the pressure of soft oil tank is too high, it may lead to the phenomenon of startup failure and spraying fire. When the engine is started, an open flame appears at the tail nozzle for more than 3 seconds, which can be considered as a spraying fire. At this time, quickly close the oil bore valve. The fire will disappear immediately, and then perform the shutdown operation. The engine can be started again after the automatic cooling. Fire handling methods. When an aircraft's onboard battery or engine fails and catches fire, the fire can spread rapidly between the battery, the engine, and the fuselage. On the ground, the treatment of the above situation is as follows. Firstly, the field operator should keep highly calm. Do not panic. Immediately evacuate the surrounding unrelated personnel and prioritize to ensure the safety of personnel. On the premise of ensuring your own safety, you should immediately cut off the power supply, close the oil bore valve, and use a carbon dioxide fire extinguisher to fight the fire close to the burning parts. At the same time, pay attention to cooling and protecting the fuel tank and engine to prevent the fire from spreading to these parts. If the shape of the aircraft remains intact, the carbon dioxide extinguisher nozzle can be pointed at the aircraft's air intake, and carbon dioxide can be injected pulsatingly into the aircraft's interior by pressing the handle intermittently at 0.5-second intervals. If there is fuel dispersed on the ground, try to remove the burning aircraft from the danger zone first, and then extinguish the flames on the aircraft and on the ground. Engine connection. The M10 engine is very easy to connect. Only one main wiring harness and one fuel line need to be connected to work. The main wiring harness and fuel line will filter mounting bracket, etc. in the engine package. Oil connection. Please use a transparent PU oil supply hose with an outer diameter of 6 and an inner diameter of 4 to connect the oil line. The oil line comes with 1.5 meters of Sampton PU hose, and the oil filter is already installed in the PU hose. There are 2 ways to install the oil filter. The sequence of oil flow in the first way is oil tank, bore valve, oil filter, engine. The oil filter is installed at the front of the engine oil supply port 5 mm from the liner. The sequence of oil flow in the second way is oil tank, oil filter, bore valve, engine. The oil filter is installed at the front of the bore valve 5 mm from the liner. Due to the characteristics of the sealing structure of the quick connector, when used in the negative pressure transmission system, before the hose is inserted into the engine quick connector and the quick connector of the bore valve, it must be pre-filled with the stainless steel hose liner included in the engine package to ensure that the oil line joints are airtight, which can effectively prevent the engine from stalling. When there are obvious compression marks at the hose port position, or when the quick connector has been inserted for more than 4 months, you should cut off the port 10 mm length of hose to ensure that the airtightness of the oil line joint, which can effectively prevent the engine from stalling. The engine should keep the bore valve closed at any time when it is not running, especially during the refueling process of the fuel tank. The maximum vertical height difference between the liquid level of the hard shell tank and the engine inlet should not exceed 200 mm. Otherwise, it will cause the engine to fail to start or spray a big fire when starting. If a soft tank is used for fuel supply, as mentioned earlier, the bore valve needs to be kept closed during refueling and then pressurized to vent the air. And when the operation is complete, a portion of the fuel should be pumped back into the drum, keeping the soft tank as slack as possible. It is recommended to open the bore valve within 5 seconds after the start command is given, which can effectively prevent the spraying of fire during startup. If the bore valve is open after more than 5 seconds, the engine may not be able to detect the fuel, which will lead to startup failure. The method to determine the reliability of the tubing connection is to run the turbojet at a large throttle after starting and observe whether there is bubble flow in the tubing. The bubble is the main cause of engine stalling, so special attention must be paid to this. The oil filter needs to be backflush after 2 to 3 hours of use. The PU tube included in the package is already fitted with the little Giant custom oil filter. To backflush the oil filter, remove the lines connected to both ends of the filter. Use a new syringe of 20 milliliters or more to draw clean fuel and connect the syringe without a needle in the opposite direction of fuel flow. Push the syringe vigorously at a rate of roughly 2 seconds for all 20 milliliters. Rinse more than 5 times, and then rinse twice in the forward direction to roughly restore the performance of the filter element. It is strictly prohibited to use wool-filled metal sintering and non-fuel specific filter element, otherwise the engine may be seriously damaged. Users who use diesel as fuel in cold areas should pay attention to the waxing of diesel at low temperatures, which can easily block the oil filter pump and cause abnormal operation. Electrical connection, aviation plug connection. Connect the male and female heads of the aviation plug to the red dot position. The aviation plug has a sealed and locked structure, and it is forbidden to pull out the wire when removing it. The unlocking slip ring must be pinched and pulled out aviation plug. When the engine is not in use, the dust cover should be installed in time at the location of the aviation plug and the oil circuit quick connector. Electrical connection, power connection. Only 3S LiPo can be used with a battery capacity equal to or greater than 2,200 mAh. Voltage range 11.4 to 12.6 volts. Connected with the XT60 plug, DC1 to V208 can also be used, powered by a regulated DC power supply. When the line plug is inserted and connected and external power is supplied, the small light on the right side of the fuse box illuminates to indicate that the engine control unit is powered up and working. Electrical connection, throttle signal cable connection. Insert the throttle signal cable into the throttle channel of the receiver according to the correct direction. After the receiver is connected and supplied with power, the small light on the left side of the fuse box will light up. The throttle signal cable will not supply power to the receiver. The receiver needs to be supplied with power from the outside, and the voltage range will depend on the receiver. The power supply of the engine is connected normally, and the receiver is connected normally and supplied with power. The two small lights on the fuse box will both light up. Relative installation position of injection nozzle. Suitable nozzle installation position can maximize the use of engine thrust. It is recommended to select and install the injection nozzle according to the dimensions shown below. Adjusting the distance between the rear edge of the engine casing and the inlet end of the injection nozzle to be 10 to 20 millimeters. A clear position of the engine center of mass can help to quickly calculate and preliminarily balance the aircraft center of gravity. Pre-start detection, power on self-test. After the engine is powered up, the engine will carry on self-test under certain conditions, and when the self-test is completed, the engine starter motor will emit 3 beeps, indicating that the self-test is completed and there is no fault, and the GSU display enters the main page. Pre-start detection, manual inspection of components. When the self-test is completed, the engine starter motor emits a continuous non-stop alarm sound, indicating that the self-test is completed and faulty. GSU display to enter the main page. The upper right corner of the screen will show the type of fault. At this time, press the stop button to eliminate the alarm. After entering the setup menu through GSU and manually testing the various functions of the engine, if a self-test false alarm is found, the engine can be started according to the normal process. If the fault cannot be solved, please contact after-sales support. Pre-start detection, power on precautions. When the internal temperature of the engine exceeds 70 degrees Celsius and the power is turned on, the engine will enter the automatic cooling program for cooling. At this time, the engine will no longer perform self-test. When the remote control and the engine are not learning the throttle, the engine may start after power on, and the motor may start and enter the cooling program. After learning the throttle, it will return to normal throttle learning. Click the Begin button on the main page to enter the Start page. Click the Radio Set button, and when this button turns green, start throttle learning. After the throttle lever of the remote control is maximized and the fine-tuning is maximized, click the Max button. Then the dialog box will pop out and select Yes, and the maximum throttle setting is completed. After setting the throttle lever of the remote control to the minimum and fine-tuning to the maximum, click the Idle button. Then the dialog box will pop out and select Yes, and the idle throttle setting is complete. After the throttle lever of the remote control is minimized and the fine-tuning is minimized, click the Main button, and then the dialog box will pop out and select Yes, Stop throttle setting complete. Click the Radio Set button, and once it turns gray, all throttle learning will be completed. Note that when the Code Setting button turns green, the GSU isolates the remote control data from the engine ECU, and the engine cannot be controlled at this time. And when the Code Setting button turns gray, the remote control data is connected to the engine, and the engine can be controlled. Pump oil. Click the Start button on the main page to enter the Start page. Hold down the Pump Fuel button and do not release it. The pump motor will continue to accelerate until it reaches 6,000 revolutions per minute. At the same time, the main fuel valve will automatically open. When the fuel enters the engine quick connector, it is released after 0.5 seconds, and the oil pump motor stops pumping oil. It should be avoided to dry grind the oil pump at high speed for a long time without oil. The oil pump has been run in and tested for performance before leaving the factory. If additional running-in is required, the service life of the oil pump will be reduced. Please do not pump oil through the Pump Test button on the Setup page. When refueling the fuel tank, a low voltage should be used to power the fuel pump. Slowly refuel, as kerosene and diesel have high viscosity, and a faster refueling speed will put a lot of pressure on the fuel tank, which may cause the tank to burst or fuel to accumulate inside the engine during startup, resulting in a large fire. A ball valve must be installed between the anti-bubble fuel tank and the engine to prevent fuel from flowing into the engine. The maximum thrust setting. Click the Begin button on the main page to enter the Begin page. Click the Thrust Set button to set the maximum thrust limit of the engine. The input value is limited to 6 to 10, such as 6, 7, 8 to 10. Click OK to save and perform adaptive learning before it takes effect. Engine start. GSU starts the engine. The GSU is connected to the engine fuse via a full section 3.5 mm cable. After connecting the fuse box, please do not touch the plug at the other end of the cable to the engine housing, otherwise there is a risk of short circuit and burning the ECU. The GSU can be used alone to start and control the engine without the need for other accessories, such as a remote control. Enter the main page. Click the Run button. Start the engine and control the engine speed through the little Giant logo slider. Click the Stop button to stop the engine. When the receiver and GSU are connected to the engine at the same time, the engine control unit will use the receiver signal as the first priority to control the engine. At this time, the run text and slider on the GSU main page will turn gray, indicating that the engine can only be started and speed controlled through the remote control. When the remote control is connected to the engine at the same time as the GSU, both the Stop button on the remote control and the GSU main page can stop the running engine. Engine start. Remote control to start the engine. Place the throttle lever on the remote control in the minimum position and fine-tune the throttle to the minimum position. At this point, the GSU main page displays stop. Then adjust the fine-tune to the maximum position and it is in the idle position. At this point, the GSU main page displays ready. Push the throttle lever up to the maximum position at this time. The GSU main page displays stick down 3 to 1 and pull the throttle lever down to the idle position within 3 seconds, and the engine starts to start automatically. To prevent false start, do not start the engine if the throttle lever is not pulled down to the idle position within 3 seconds. If you need to restart the engine, please put the throttle lever idle again. At this point, the GSU main page displays ready and restart by pushing up and pulling down the throttle lever. Adaptive learning. When using the engine for the first time, adjusting thrust settings, updating fuel lines, replacing filters, experiencing significant changes in the external temperature of the engine, seasonal variations after the last learning session, or experiencing significant changes in altitude, it is necessary to manually perform an engine adaptive learning session. The engine can automatically perform adaptive learning in all other states. Adaptive learning can keep the engine in the best matching state with the atmospheric and oil environment, effectively reducing the risk of acceleration, deceleration, and engine stalling. The manual operation adaptive learning method is: after the engine is successfully started, place the remote control throttle lever in the idle position. Enter the GSU start page. Click the adaptive learning button, and the GSU page will jump to the main page. Above the main page, the words "Learn Keep Idle Speed" will appear. Place the remote control throttle lever in the idle position, and then the words "Learn Keep Full Speed" will appear. Slowly push the remote control throttle lever for 3 to 5 seconds to complete the stroke, and push it at a constant speed to the maximum value. Wait for a few seconds. When the display shows that the learn completed, the adaptive learning setting is completed, and the throttle lever can be used normally. Shut down and restart. Enter the setup page. Click the Restart Set button to turn on or off this function. The green background represents the execution of the current display content. After the function is enabled, if the engine does not receive any shutdown command during operation, resulting in engine shutdown, the engine will immediately enter the shutdown and restart process. The restart time is about 10 seconds, and the number of restarts is once. If the restart is unsuccessful, the engine will enter the shutdown and cooling program. Out-of-control protection strategy. After losing signal, the receiver may have two states related to the remote control settings. One is that the receiver continues to maintain the instructions before the loss, and the other is that the signal between the receiver and the engine is lost. The running status of the engine is: when the engine is in the first operating state, it will maintain the current speed and continue to run. If it is the second case, the engine maintains the current speed for 3 seconds and then goes to idle, and then maintains it for another 10 seconds and then enters the shutdown procedure. The engine loses the signal from the receiver, and when it recovers within 13 seconds, the engine continues to run according to the current position of the throttle lever at the remote control. Engine shutdown. The throttle rod of the remote control is adjusted to the minimum. The throttle is fine-tuned to the minimum. The engine is turned off and enters the automatic heat dissipation stage, and the motor speed is 7,000 RPM during heat dissipation. When the internal temperature of the engine is lower than 70 degrees Celsius, the engine stops heat dissipation. The engine can be started again at any time during the cooling program without waiting for the cooling program to be completed or for the power to be reapplied. In accordance with the starting procedure, manual heat dissipation. Manual heat dissipation can be achieved through the remote control. Adjust the throttle lever and trim to the minimum position, then push the throttle lever to the maximum position, and the engine will start manual heat dissipation. Pull the throttle lever back to the minimum position, stop manual cooling, and use GSU to perform manual heat dissipation. Go to the setup page. Click on the starter to turn on manual heat dissipation. Click on the start motor again to turn off manual heat dissipation. Non-definition and performance parameters.